Thank you, Milan. Thank you for you hosting this and for all your promotion and organizing uh, challenges and delights.
You've done a few things for our community, so I can only say thank you for what you've done. This is just a small part.
So this talk is brand new. I have never given this talk before, and so we don't know what's going to happen. None of us. So we'll see. It's likely to be a bit of a challenge. It's some sort of deep philosophical concepts from a certain point of view. We'll see. I've been immersing myself in Holons for I don't know, a number of days here nonstop. Marie Murta can attest. I want to acknowledge Marie, the COO of the Collective Edge and my partner in this stuff, for her inspiration and providing me with some significant research material for this and talking this over with me. So thank you. The intent of this talk is to help you think about how to shift your thinking from an individual level. My premise is that we all by default look from an individual point of view. My point of view, your point of view, me in relationship to you point of view. We don't look from a systemic level, fundamentally. That's a really difficult shift to make. But if we're going to work in organizations, especially if we're going beyond just a team level, though even at a team level, I think it's important to be able to raise our gaze to a different Holon, to a different level of systemness, if you will, is fundamental. Is really makes a big difference. So this talk is about that. We're going to go in a number of different places with Holons. So this took me back to Leo Gura. Marie, if you could find that Holon talk and put it in the chat, thank you so much. And it took me back to the original in Ken Wilber in Sex Ecology and Spirituality, which is a hefty read, let's say, but I love it in manageable doses. So what is a Holon? A Holon is something that is simultaneously a whole in and of itself, as well as a part of a larger whole. In other words, Holons can be understood as the constituent part wholes of a hierarchy, or as we will talk about, a holarchy. A holarchy having, there's certainly a gradation, there's certainly maturity or more complexity or more depth to higher Holons, but it's not a dominator hierarchy. And the other thing is that there is no fundamental base part. We used to think that an atom was the base part of reality, but that's just not true. That's not what quantum physics found. So there's no base part, and nor is there an ultimate whole, that it's Holons all the way up and all the way down. Now, as I've sat with that, there's a new level of awareness that I think has been dawning for me with doing this study again, which is that the whole universe is made up of Holons, and they're all interconnected with each other, and that's what we see and that's what we experience, and we focus on one or two or a couple of particular levels. Okay, so how are Holons configured? So think about any junior Holon or any senior Holon, relatively speaking, evolved after a junior Holon. So the junior Holons have to have evolved first before more senior ones. So cells evolved, singular cellular organisms without very much differentiation, evolved before bigger organisms. And for us, for instance, in most animals that we're familiar with, cells comprise organs, which comprise organ systems, which comprise our body, right? There's some kind of hierarchy there, or holarchy there. And a feature of it is that the junior Holon's form and structure is preserved. So when a cell is incorporated into an organ, it doesn't fundamentally change the cell. It certainly doesn't change the structure or form of the cell. It might create different relationships, this cell to that cell, that do different differentiated functions, but it fundamentally doesn't change the junior Holon. I just said that senior may constrain or shape the junior to create a new and emergent innovation. Now, in the case of cells and organs, that's maybe not quite as interesting for us as organizational forms or consciousness or whatever, but still, the principle holds. And this is the principle of transcendent include. So we don't, an organ doesn't destroy the cell in any way. It incorporates it, it envelops it, it includes it, and it goes beyond it. It goes to a higher level of differentiation. Fundamentally, if it's a physical thing, it goes to a greater level of complexity. If it's a mental, emotional thing, it goes to a greater level of consciousness. So that's how these holons relate to each other, just with a certain kind of example. And there's 4 primary drives that apply to all holons. On the one hand, and they're in a sort of dynamic tension to each other, transcendence and integration, but we'll talk first about communion and agency. So think about your relationship, let's say, to your family, to your spouse, to your partner, really pretty much to anybody, though it gets more intense with a significant other. There's an irreconcilable difference between wanting to be in relationship, communion, and wanting to be separate, agency. There's no way, that's a tension that we hold in life, that we want both things. We go too far away, we want to come back. We get too close, we want to go away. We want to have our own sense of integrity. And we also want to join with others. We are fundamentally, human beings are fundamentally herd animals, but the nature of the universe is that it wants to connect. The nature of the universe is not solitary. So that's one tension and that's what happens in that holon in the cell. The cell maintains its own agency, but also is drawn to becoming together with other cells to form more complex wholes. Okay, so that's a horizontal tension, if you will. And then a vertical tension is from the point of view of the organ, it wants the cells to be healthy. It wants to embrace them. It doesn't want to harm them or to overwhelm them. It wants to constrain them in certain ways into a whole, but it doesn't want to, from the point of view of a team, a team wants to include and differentiate and embrace all its members. It wants to integrate them. It wants them to be included. And at the same time, it might want transcendence. It might want to grow into, a greater thing, a greater possibility. If we change this to humans want to be on their own, and they want to be part of something bigger. That's why a team or an organization with a mission or purpose is so powerful of a draw for us. It pulls us in, and we want to transcend, or we want to move our consciousness to a higher level. That's another form of transcendence, right? That's a natural drive in us, in each of us. It's also a natural drive in the universe. In all holons have a need, or some of them are clearly not conscious in the way we are, or it would seem so. But that doesn't mean that they don't have consciousness per se. All right. So let's think about holons that belong to you, where you are the outside, if you will, of some holons. So from a physical point of view, you are comprised of you're comprised of trillions of cells, so that must mean megatrillions of molecules, right? It's ridiculous to even think about how many molecules are in each of us, and then organs and organ systems in our body. So that's a sense you can get, and we might have a relationship with, if you've had a disease, you might form a relationship. If you have a heart problem, you might start visualizing your heart. You might start having the image of, I want to connect with my heart, or my stomach, or whatever part of my immune system, whatever part of me is, I have that's an integration move. That's a inviting, that's a welcoming those parts of ourselves. From a more psychological point of view, we might talk about there's a shadow inside, lowest level down. There are sub-personalities. There's our overall personality or ego, which mediates everything. The personality is what would keep sub-personalities down, not allow them to come out, right? And the biggest thing is the self. The self is something that Jung talked about. It's not the ego self, it's a bigger self than that. It's a higher self in some sense. So I might have a different, for me, for instance, right now, I'm at my age, the task of elderhood is to integrate parts of ourselves that we've shut off. I mean, that's sort of a lifelong task, but for me, recognizing my own sub-personalities is like a really active developmental task for me right now. Before I pushed those down, I didn't want to see those. I sidelined them. And now I'm trying to welcome them. And this is the basis for us using ourselves as an instrument of change, is us having a relationship with these parts of ourselves, right? Not shutting them out, but going down into them, exploring them in some way. This is an it view, this is an I view. And so that's a question, is what holon, what part of yourself do you want to integrate? What's alive for you in terms of having a relationship with a sub part of yourself? Think about if I could activate all those parts of myself and bring them all into an alliance in some way, or an alignment of some kind. Okay, so let's go the other way. So holons that you belong to, that you are part of. So we might think about family. Family is the, different people have very different relationships to family. For some people, it's clearly the most important thing for them. For other people, are sort of estranged from their families. But there's a consciousness, or this is what I'm wanting to point to in terms of the systemic level, that there's something there that we never lose. we can never not be part of our family. There's something that's just primal about that. Us as herd animals evolved to have a relationship in communion in some sense. Another level up is the tribal or the ethnic, which is very it's sort of embattled right now, or sensitive, or we're seeing the shadow of it right now, right? And yet it's there. It's part of our history, is to identify who's like us and who's not like us. That's part of how we evolved as human beings. And we're at a place with the ability to transcend that now, but that doesn't mean that that's not part of us. That doesn't mean it's not a whole on a system that we belong to. That's something that's been challenging for me, is to be with that, some of my ancestry, some of what my ancestors did is not, I'm not happy about it. And yet I can't deny that I'm part of those systems. A nation is another level of, I have an identification as being an American, and I can feel the edge of that. I can feel or we can imagine being part of humanity. And is that a real relationship we have? Or is that sort of an idealistic relationship we want to have, we wish we had? Where do I identify? What's real for me in terms of my relationships? Could I have a relationship with Gaia, with Earth, actually with the entire ecosystem? Could I feel myself as a part of that? In an organization, we go from, we're first on our own, and then usually we're part of a team, right? And that has a certain compellingness for a lot of us. And we have different levels of identification with each of these, and we can see how their parts, how they grow out of each other, how they hold each other in some sense. So the question is, in what Holon do you experience belonging? Where do you feel like where do you feel your connectedness? This is I think they're called Petrushka dolls. I don't know how to spell that, so feel free to put that in if you know how to, in chat if you know how to spell it. So imagine Holons as being, this was a very helpful image for me in terms of kind of understanding the complexity of the relationship between Holons. What if these all were alive? The Petrushka doll image is useful for a nested anything, right? But what if they were actually alive and they actually interacted with each other? Can you feel into how that would really change things? I mean, that's complexity, right? That's the living quality of our universe that we're in. And what if humans are not the most important Holon? That's an interesting idea. Okay, so we're going to go to a couple of specific examples. I'm not paying attention to the chat. Is there, Mary, is there anything in there that I might want to answer as a question?
No, actually, no, there's not. Good conversation, but it's no questions.
Or they're dumbfounded with, holy shit, this is huge stuff.
You'd have to ask that.
I'm not ready to hear. Okay, so let's think about it specifically in an organization and specifically. No, actually, let me pause for a second because I'm about to make a pretty big shift. I do want to open it to questions right now. Does the concept of Holon and I'm trying to, many people have been exposed to the concept of Holon, but what I'm trying to do is to create a more vivid picture for you about that. So if I'm not doing that, help me out.
I have a question, Michael, if I may. There's the concept of emergent qualities, so that you can kind of a super system has certain capabilities that you cannot reduce to the qualities of the elements. How would that reflect here in the model that you are describing?
Yeah, that's exactly consistent with that. Thank you, Lars. With the super Holon, if you will, or the senior Holon, is always a transcendence and never additive with the parts. It's always a new form. It incorporates the parts, as wholes in some way without destroying them, but it also goes beyond them in some innovative new way. So that's totally the idea, a team is not just a collection of people, a collection of individuals. If it's really a team, it has a synergy to it that can't be done by just the individual people doing something together. There's some other, some things that are called teams are, from my point of view, are not a team Holon. They are merely, collections of people. Like one of the examples we use is that a grain of sand is a Holon, but a big pile of sand is not a new Holon. It's just a pile of sand. A pile of people is just a pile of people. A team is a team. A team has a certain kind of you know it when you see it, right? You can feel it when it's really a team. It's like it's slightly supernatural or mystical or it gives me chills when I see a real team. There's some energetic signature to it. Did that address your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Something else right now? Okay, so I'm going to assume that you all know this model. This is the individual singular level. This is the collective level. This is the intangible subjective side. This is the objective tangible side. So what we're used to doing is we always put an individual in the middle, and we talk about our individual subjective experience, and we talk about our experience within a collective. But it's still our experience fundamentally. So this is trying to take I'm suggesting, what if you put a team in the middle here? What if, as a thought experiment, I could make the case that, so let me digress for a second. I do a lot of work with something called systemic constellations. And systemic constellations allow you to see and experience a living picture of a system. It started out in families, a man named Bert Hellinger, and moved to organizational work. And there's literally thousands of practitioners around the world for the last 25, 30 years. And what people have discovered that facilitate constellations is that it is as if, it may be the case that it's true, but it may just be that it's as if families have a memory. Families have a multi-generational memory. Families remember, slights done to different members. They remember excluded members. They tamp down trauma that's experienced in one generation and outsource it essentially to another generation when it can be dealt with. So they act as if they have agency. Now, metaphysically, who knows if that's true, but for me, it's like it's an emergent consciousness property of a Holon. It just makes sense that there, I've seen it. There feels like there is to me. That's my experience. But I'm not trying to make a metaphysical claim. I'm offering it as a thought experiment. What if a team had an I quadrant, had an it quadrant, and you could think about it from that point of view. That's a lot of what ORSC does is fundamentally talk about like a voice of the system or the third entity, right, of a system. Mendel does it. Constellations do it. So if I'm an individual and I'm in conflict in my team, then probably I'm going to have one of a couple of reactions. I'm going to want to avoid it, or I'm going to want to get it over with as fast as possible, or I'm going to want to, resolve it in some useful way, but I'll be happy when it's done. That's a typical, it's not the only possible individual point of view, but it's a typical one. From the point of view of the team, if the team has a consciousness, that's not true at all. The conflict is really interesting. The conflict is a sign of something going on within me. The conflict is like, ooh, let's find out what's going on there. Let's investigate that. Let's use that. I'm not worried about it from a team point of view. I mean, unless it's really painful and toxic, and unless it starts to disintegrate those individual holons, right? You see, I'm about preserving agency and communion for myself and for my holons. So I'm more inclined to see what's the meaning of a conflict and not judge it. You following me? I'm gonna want to know or experience what the emotional field is like. The emotional field is my I in some sense. So, I mean, as we're doing this, see if you can do this as a thought experiment for yourself. Get a team in mind and think about experiencing it from the point of view of the team's I instead of your own. How would I experience the emotional field as a team? I'd probably like some, I wouldn't like others. But I wouldn't be so fixated on each individual's contribution or perspective. I'd be more interested in the flow of things. I'd be more interested in the energy. I'd want to know, is there hidden information? Is somebody not saying something that could help us all? Because I want integration of all these, and maybe to transcend in some sense, like to have a transcendent mission, a great purpose, a really powerful outcome in some sense. And I'll do that by mining all the information within the team. And I want to create some sense of fairness and that.
Michael, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how would you distinguish the I of the team versus the we of the team? Could you talk a little bit about how the two are different?
That's a really good question. So the we of the team would be, if you really shift the team up here, the we of the team would be its relationships to other teams. And its
Okay, thank you.
relationship, does that make sense?
So the I is sort of like the team's relationship to itself, like what's their unique
Yeah,
energy versus.
it is its experience of emotional fields and whatever happens within the an atmosphere of what it feels like in a team.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
Yeah.
so an alternate, not on a different, kind of a different plane, but if I am the individual Holon, then the we of my image is the team.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Is the team's I. Yes.
Right.
Yes. You see how this is a little bit confusing. It's a little bit of a push. It's kind of interesting, but it's also a little bit like, whoa. You don't want to take it too far. But I'm trying to lure you into the Holon shift to what if you actually could see from the team I, instead of from yours. Well, what would you see? Other comments, questions?
I have another question, if I may.
Sure.
How would a team look like that is rather developed, let's say in the here upper left quadrant? So what would be characteristics? What would be possible for them?
Well, I think there would be, that's an interesting question, Lars. I think there would be, just like with an individual, or now maybe not just like with an individual, but similar to an individual, there would be a sense of authenticity, right? And authenticity at a team level would be hearing every voice. It would be, not blocking. I mean, think about it. It's like, think about people in a team. I mean, have you ever seen people in a team that are marginalized? That people don't want to hear them. Maybe they're a complainer, maybe they're just too far out or whatever. I'm assuming that most of you have seen somebody who's marginalized in a team. That's not authentic from a team point of view. That's a shadow, right? Compared to an individual, it's a shadow. So we're not able to hear that. We're blocking that level of consciousness in our system. And we could open up to that. We could create space for that. That's what systemic coaching does, is tries to open up space for marginalized voices in part. So that's one fundamental thing I can see is authenticity. Jardine, I'll come to you in a second, unless you're commenting on this question. If you get another question, we'll get to you in a second. Thank you.
Would cohesion be an attribute of the I quadrant of a team?
Yeah, that sounds right. What do you mean by cohesion in this case, Cindy?
Held together. The boundaries. The boundary might be a little squishy, but it's not as squishy as all over the place. Or at least a healthy team would have cohesion, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And a sense of a clear purpose, which is like compared to an individual in the I quadrant of the team, it would be on my mission, on my calling. It would be my highest expression, right? Which means that it would have to be a really good team. Jardina?
Thanks. So the thing that I struggle with, and I've struggled with this for a while, so I'm happy to be able to ask it here, is like when you talk about, is there hidden information in the team? You say, is somebody hiding information, or what's the emotional field, but how are people feeling? Then I feel like we go back to the I. So how do you articulate that it truly is in the system and not in a person? Like, is it that everybody's sort of hiding information? Like,
Well, I think I might have got a little lost in that. So let me take a stab and see as a probe, and you can tell me if it moved the ball. So there is a sense in which all everybody in a team or in any given system is a voice of that system, in part, but not the voice of that system, right? Just a voice of that system. And there's, I think, a higher level voice that's the voice of the system itself, or the voice of the third spirit or the third entity or whatever you want to call it. That's the like the team's consciousness.
sure.
And so hidden information is going to be probably inside of specific team members in the system. And the idea is that when you have hidden information in a system, because it's marginalized, it might be marginalized by the person themselves. It might be marginalized by other people. It's hard to know. It could be, it could be, I'm a complying kind of a person, and I am really don't want to hurt other people's feelings or make people mad, and so I'm going to keep something to myself. Okay, so what's the next question after?
How do I know that that was the I and that was the system and not the individual? That's the question.
Well, see, I don't think there's a difference at that level. I mean, well, there's a sense in which, what would I say? Yeah, I think I see your the slipperiness of the distinction. It'd be hard to know that, but in the context of disclosing it. So if somebody disclosed it, it could be that it really is just a personal thing that doesn't have anything to do with the team. I mean, that's conceivable. But you couldn't know that probably without the context of disclosing it in the team. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Or what is it you're trying to avoid or not have happen?
Well, for me, it's just, I always fall back into, when I look at the system, that I'm looking at the individuals again. I have to, that's the problem.
Well, yeah, but so inviting that voice, if it seems significant, is part of that probing. Like you can't know that ahead of time what it is. I mean, for sure, you have to bring it out. I think. I mean, especially if you have an intuition about it, that is important to bring out. I mean, I get drawn, when I do a lot of work with groups, not teams per se, but cohorts and whatnot. And I just have an intuition. I just feel drawn to a given person or to a given thing that said, or I'm suspecting that they're about to say something or talk or something. Usually because I'm really attuned to that, and usually there's something there, but sometimes I'm just totally making it up. And I can only find out by sending out a probe. Well, or by sitting on it and seeing what happens, but then I might be really missing something.
Okay, thank you.
Sure,
That was
you're welcome.
helpful.
Good.
Michael,
Yeah.
sorry, there's a comment or a question, I'm not sure, from Becca. Becca, would you like to come off and read your comment? Question?
Yeah, sure. I was sort of musing about the sort of idea of shifting from the individual I to the team I, and that idea of hidden information. And the curiosity that I had was perhaps it could look like maybe a habit or behavior that the team is not really conscious about that requires further investigation or transparency. So maybe the
Mhm.
team even knows that something is amiss,
Yes, absolutely.
but the actual thing that's amiss for the group is not obvious. And that could be a
Yes.
situation where it's not even just hidden
Yes.
information by an individual on the team.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. No. It could be in the entire group's blind spot. Absolutely.
I don't know if it's helpful, but and I would not consider myself an expert on this, but when I was first struggling with the concept, I went back to the, inside me, I have a CEO, a little child, a
Yeah,
COO,
right.
a sports
Right.
person, whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
always aware of who
Right.
they are.
Yeah.
But if I look at it in that context, then I am the team and the individuals inside me are the individual people that make up that team. And so
Yeah.
it was easier for
Yeah.
me to conceptualize the Holons that way. Don't know if it'll work for anybody else, but
By visualizing your own inside team.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
individuals, if I look at
Yeah.
myself as the team and
Yeah. Right.
individuals inside me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. That definitely sounds like a good technique. I think we only have about 3 more minutes. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's just breeze by this. Doing the same thing at the program level. You would ask things like, do the teams have sufficient agency? Do my constituent Holons? This is a problem in a scaled Agile implementation. Is if it's top down, the teams don't often have the right agency. They haven't been given agency in the first place. Right. So that's what you might ask. Is there a common outcome that unites teams and individuals of the program? The thing I think about with a program is I was part of a program in like the very end of the 90s, and it was about 250 people. It was called the Da Vinci program. And I remember that program to this day. It's by far had the most juice, and you could feel the Holon of it. You could feel the cohesiveness and the glue. I've never experienced it at that many people before. It was like a team, only it had 250 people. It had about 12 teams, and I was a member of one of those teams. But the group had a very big identity and a very it was amazing. Just to feel that level of coherence within that many people. It was a very vivid experience. All right, 45 minutes is not very much. So I guess we're done. I'd be happy to stay around for a couple of minutes if we have that. Other questions you might have? Comments?
I have a question that's not necessarily related to this, although it's probably covered. You had an enterprise agile boot camp, week-long boot camp. Is that offered only once a year?
Oh, no, we're offering, that's called Enterprise Coach Master Camp.
Right. That's
the 5-day program that we have.
Yeah,
3 days 1 week and 2 days the next.
But I happened to be starting a new job that same exact week that it was and so I just wondered if it was offered another time.
It certainly is. Marika, are you able to put a link to that in the chat? It's we're offering it May 10th, I think.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, we offer it multiple times a year. And
Awesome.
the other program we have, Transformation Mastery, is an 8-month cohort program for to develop competence as an enterprise coach, not just.
Nice. So is it like you would take the Enterprise Coach Master Camp first and then Transformation Mastery is the next logical step?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much.
It's an ENT and a CAT certification from IC Agile. So you can get that from somebody else, but there's something that's really, it's a really powerful program.